Welcome to the Speakeasy podcast. Here we discuss issues important to you, topics that empower the community, and conversations that spark change. This is a safe space where we try to understand and learn from each other. Mahaba-habang usapan. Speak true and speak free. It's time we speak easy.
Mickey Sachico. Every October, we commemorate World Mental Health Day. But the topic of mental health is a pressing issue that still needs to be discussed at all times. The stigma still exists, and we're yet to cover all bases. So please join us for the San Miguelite Speakeasy podcast, Mental Health at Work, a mahaba-habang usapan on turning your workplace into a safe space, brought to you by CNN Philippines in partnership with San Miguelite. I'm super thrilled for our panelists today. Let's meet them one by one. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello. I'm RJ. I'm a medical doctor by profession, but my work mainly deals with public health.
Hi everyone, I'm Rian Portuguese. I'm a psychologist and I'm currently busy sa aking mga advocacy din sa mental health. And then at the same time, I have my own startup company that provides mental health access and mental health programs to corporate, especially dun sa mga talagang fast-paced na mga organizations.
Hello everyone, I'm Rainier. And just like Rian, I'm a registered psychologist. I'm a faculty member at Rizal Technological University. And I'm the founder of the Facebook page, The Juan Psychologist, wherein I was able to create that Facebook page in the peak of the pandemic. That's why I have a subtitle for my page, Psikologista na Makabagong Normal. Mm-hmm. And the usual advocacies that I do in my page is about, taking emotions as something na normal for us to express it, for us to have awareness, to fight off the stigma connected with mental health. And at the same time, yung about sa men's mental health, because of course there's so much stigma to how men should be expressing their emotions. And so therefore, these are the things that I advocate about in my page.
Amazing, love it. Nice to meet you, Dr. RJ, Rian, and Prof. Rainier. Different voices from different people. I am super excited for the different perspectives that we're gonna have today. Let's talk about first our personal experiences, or maybe we can throw in some professional experiences as well, because apparently we're now in the third year of the pandemic, di ba? Sobrang, time flew so fast. Personally, I would say it was non-linear journey for me, professionally and personally. There were a lot of highs, there were a lot of lows as well. How about you guys?
Well, sa akin, ang dami namin na-encounter, especially with young people, because I work with an NGO that works with youth mental health concerns, And mahirap siya, especially for them who are currently at school, at yung iba, nasa workplace na, So maraming mga nahirapan when it comes to transition to work from home setup, Nahirapan sila mag-establish ng mga boundaries. Yeah. So I think yun yung isa sa mga naging blurred talaga during the pandemic, and they had to resort to various coping mechanisms.
Yeah, shocking talaga, blurred lines. A lot of people have, suddenly have to do that, right? How about you?
Nagagalit ako sa nasabi ni Doc RJ kasi yun din, common na encounter yan ng mga clients ko. And at the same time, siguro yung additional dito yung experience mismo ng mga mental health practitioners during nung height ng pandemic. Kasama ako doon actually. Sobrang stressful niya to the point na kami din, parang minsan nasasabi namin na kailangan din namin ng break. So, ina-adjust din actually yung mga schedule namin. Magkaroon kami ng talagang time to practice din yung self-care. Yes. Kasi nagkakaroon kami ng possibility na magkaroon ng compassion fatigue. So, ang daming mga pangyari during the pandemic na talagang pati yung mental health professionals talaga nag-a-adjust. And then, yun, kasama na din syempre nung pandemic yung mga ginagawa nga din, mga advocacy about helping the community na ma-reach out sila. Ang hirap-hirap nun kasi syempre new normal nung time na yun, di ba? So, ang hirap, lahat online. So, paano ma-reach yung community. And at the same time, yung mga nasa workplace. Maraming mga parang mga employees, for instance, yung mga, sabihin natin Gen X, not all of them are actually tech-savvy. So, sobrang tindi nung adjustment nila dun sa usual na, kung kunwari yung mga work na kayang matapos in just 1 hour, dumodoble sa kanila.
Yes.
Kasi hindi rin lahat pare-parehas ng internet connection, mga ganyan yung audio. Minsan yung pag-unmute, mute lang, nahihirapan sila na i-workout. Sobrang stressful yun sa mga Gen X and especially sa mga boomer. Yung mga generational differences lumabas din during the pandemic. So, medyo mas nahirapan yung mga nandun sa ganong klase ng generation. Maraming nahirapan sa adjustment, pero kitang-kita or litaw na litaw yung mga experiences ng mga nasa different generations din. And sobrang dami. I think marami tayong pag-uusapan.
I'm so excited. And yes, I totally agree. Sobrang daming adjustment for everyone, especially nga yung mga non-techie, di ba, has to suddenly become overwhelmed with those technical stuff that they have to deal with in their work, right? And at the same time, I totally agree with that compassionate fatigue as well. Not just for like common doctors, but even for psychologists, psychiatrists, health coaches, that we're all human sometimes, but sobrang, we have to deal with so many things. But I really love that during the pandemic, na-highlight lalo pa yung healthy living, yung self-care. Mas lalo siyang na-highlight, ano?
As for me, since I'm in the academe, yung 1 week na announcement, no, that there's no class, no, hindi natin in-expect na magiging 2 years and even longer. No? And actually, this fast transition, no, could actually affect yung ating mental health because we weren't able to prepare or regulate ourselves that moment, no, will actually come wherein talagang there's so much panic. I mean, not just in our daily living, but also, no, in the academe where I was working into. Wherein I remember talagang sobrang stressful siya because you are, no, in your gadget looking at it, no, for a long time. Kung saan dyan nauso yung 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, you have to look something, no, na 20 feet away for 20 seconds. Kasi talagang it's physically exhausting, no. Sa academe, no, wherein yung setup ng face-to-face, naging online siya, we have to make modules and all that. So there's so much adjustment, no, that we have to do in a very fast pace. And that fast pace of adjustment is, of course, stimulating more stress within us. So talagang it was a very difficult time, but then I'm just glad, no, that we were able to adapt eventually to it, and we can also see, no, the benefits of doing those like online work and also yung online classes.
Siguro, gusto ko lang din idagdag na hindi same yung effect ng pandemic to each person, no? So parang highly individualized siya, especially for those experiencing yung mga inequalities, di ba? May mga kakilala ko na wala ng trabaho, yung iba ayaw mag-seek ng consult kasi pangkain na lang nila, ilalagay pa sa therapy or medication. So may mga ganong mga instances ako na encounter. And for some, no, dahil dun sa kanilang identities, especially sa mga LGBTQIA+ na mga kasama natin and women, no? Some of them experienced violence, some of them experienced lack of support. And itong mga ito, sobrang laking impact niya in terms of mental health outcomes.
I absolutely agree. Multi-dimensional talaga yung problem when it comes to like mental health. Like, it's hard to have a one-size-fits-all solution for it. We have to consider, sino ba to? Like, oh, this one is a single mom. Sino ba to? Oh, this one is a guy. You said it kanina, di ba? Like, they seek lesser support because obviously there are more stigma for that kind of sex, right? So different people have different experiences. So it's really important that when people, regardless if you are like a policymaker or you're someone who is a leader in an organization, let's say in a workplace, if you are going to come up with a solution, you're not just thinking on a short-term solution, but long-term solution. And more importantly, it's like a holistic thinking. Hindi lang na parang, oh, ito yung solution natin, okay na yan para sa lahat. Ganyan naman talaga, lahat tayo na may problema sa mental health. It's like, it's important na talagang multidimensional yung aspect natin. Later on, we're gonna talk about the tools, but I'm just really curious about more of, so now that we're in the 3rd year of the pandemic, what are like the major things, the realizations that you guys have picked up in terms of the advocacy, you know, as a professor, as a psychologist with a startup, ano yung mga learnings nyo that you guys wanna share to us?
Ako siguro yung na-encounter ko and lumalabas talaga na nung pandemic, no? At saka ngayon, yan, lumabas na yung mga terms na quiet quitting. Mas umibabaw na din yung idea ng presenteeism. Dati, absenteeism yung sinasabi. Ngayon, presenteeism, meaning may mga times na po pwedeng pa-present yung mga employees sa organization but they are not actually functioning well. Kasi di ba may mga previews na mga sinasabi yung mga bosses na parang, hindi, kailangan pumasok na sila sa office kasi pag pumasok sila sa office, makakapagtrabaho sila. Yung mga employees sinasabi na, hindi naman assurance yun na when you're in the office, makakapagtrabaho ka din talaga totally. Kasi nga, dun sa idea ng presenteeism, nandiyan na din yung employee assistance program. So, marami na ring organization ngayon na nag-reach out sa mga startup to outsource yung kanilang healthcare services or yung mga mental health programs para matulungan yung mga employees nila. Like what you've mentioned earlier, hindi accessible sa mga employees yung lahat ng ng mga teleconsultations or yung mga accessibility sa mga psychologists and psychiatrists. So doon talaga kahit papaano na-push yung mga organizations o nga kailangan natin mag-outsource. Kung hindi natin kayang mag-hire ng mga psychologists dito sa organization natin, we can outsource yung mga mental health programs. Kaya nandiyan na din yung mga resiliency program or yung mga wellness program. Hindi na lang siya basta yung mga first 2 years ng pandemic, puro webinar Pero nakita natin nung mga third year, natuto na din sila na kailangan ng employee assistance program, meaning kahit pa paano maging regular yung mga wellness sessions plus teleconsultation. And eventually, nag-emerge na din yung mga startup company that provides yung mga mental health programs and yung mga makakatulong nga dun sa mga employees. Napakadami. Ang daming mga nangyari. Talagang nag-evolve din talaga yung mga organizations. Kaya dahil din doon, parang kailangan din talaga nila mapilitan kasi may mga mandated na din na nilabas yung government na ito dapat sa public sector, sa private sector talagang may mental health program. Yun nga lang, hindi lahat talaga perfect kasi may mga times na hindi talaga lahat nakakapag-follow kasi hindi naman lahat ng organizations may enough na fund din to actually prioritize yung mental health. So, medyo mahirap siya pero nagagawa ng paraan na din.
Now, Prof. Rainier, I want to hear your perspective. What are the mental health issues that we've all experienced, like the most common ones, if you can include in like maybe post-traumatic stress, and like maybe expand on that a little bit so that we can all fully understand?
Now, some of the common like mental health conditions na parang na-experience ng maraming mga tao is yung anxiety and depression, which is very aligned siya to the theme of how we have experienced the pandemic. Anxiety in a sense na during the time of the pandemic, there was uncertainty. Kumbaga, talagang naramdaman natin yung being in the unknown, We're in ano bang mangyayari? Kasi before, yung mga first months ng pandemic, hindi natin alam kung paano ito mariresolba, patuloy yung pagtaas ng kaso ng mga nagkaka-COVID and then also yung mortality rate, So nakaka-anxious talaga siya, thinking about what if I get this. So there's this sense of anxiety within us. Then a lot of people also, were able to experience yung hopelessness saka helplessness, which are some of the common themes, ng pagkakaroon ng depressive feelings. Then in addition to this is that siyempre yung pagbabago, yung biglang pagbabago from the face-to-face setup, then nag-online tayo, work from home, then basically yung pagbabalik ulit to the normal life natin, it could bring about yung parang problems when it comes to adjustment. Like there are some people na parang because of their experience during the COVID-19 wherein they had some symptoms because probably they went out, they had an interaction from someone outside, then bigla silang magbabalik doon sa work setup. Parang kumbaga, the adjustment for them is too much for them to handle, na nagkakaroon sila ng distress. And this is what we call as adjustment disorder, wherein may mga tao na, of course, change is good, but not all can actually adapt to change. Some people, they respond to it with distress. Kasi nga, there are some events that probably are quite stressful and traumatic for them to go back in that setting. And when we say naman na post-traumatic stress, these are some of the things na pwede nating maranasan na parang nagkakaroon tayo ng faulty thinking or faulty patterns when it comes to sa mga na-experience natin previously na parang na-perceive natin siya as threatening wherein in reality naman talaga is probably it's really non-threatening. So therefore, parang nagkakaroon tayo ng stress response to those events that could remind us of those similar situations wherein experience natin yung trauma or yung stress within a certain setting of our lives.
Yeah, it's really good that you're highlighting yung mga top common problems because iba-iba talaga, some people suddenly became more resilient, but some people suffered from depression, some became more anxious, whereas prior to the pandemic, they're confident and happy, bubbly people, right? So iba-iba talaga, it's really important that we have this kind of talk so that we can highlight ano ba yung mga tools, what can we learn, how can we move forward and all that. What are the most common tools that you think might be helpful aligned to the common problems that Prof mentioned?
Well, siguro yung gusto ko munang i-highlight is that hindi naman lahat ng mga mental health concerns ay nagtra-translate to mental health disorders. Kasi ako, naniniwala talaga ako na hindi pwedeng i-over-pathologize natin yung normal emotions. Kasi it's part of us being humans, di ba? Na parang pwede tayong malungkot, pwede tayong ma-frustrate. At normal yon sa atin, no? As humans, na ganun yung ating response. Lalo na kung difficult yung situation na kinaharap natin. So ako, yung pinaka gusto kong i-emphasize talaga ay yung community-based support, no? Kasi given nga na limited yung mga psychologists natin at mga psychiatrists, I think the most valuable mental health resource are the people around you. Diba? Kaya nga, lagi kong sinasabi, pag kausap ko yung mga companies, no, na hindi lang siya dapat individual effort, but there has to be a system na we allow them to actually care for themselves, to actually practice self-care. No? Kasi syempre, pag yung workplace practices, yung workplace culture, or yung dynamics dun sa workplace ay hindi healthy, hindi siya conducive for mental health. So it has to be a double strategy, no? Na habang tinuturuan natin yung mga tao ng mga self-care, coping mechanisms, kailangan yung company, meron rin siyang mga built-in policies na i-examine niya kung paano yung workplace processes and cultures doon. So sabay yun, dapat na in-advocate natin.
That is so true. Yung collective efforts, right? Having that support community. Kasi there was this very interesting data from World Health Organization that in the Philippines, combining psychiatrists and psychologists, it's just about 1,900 practicing professionals right now. And we're closing to 110 million population here. So that's like how many in one psychiatrist or psychologist to one. So I really love that there are startups approaching different companies so that it's a group setting, implementations of wellness programs to support their mental well-being. So now that we're doing hybrid, there are companies doing hybrid setup, there are companies doing fully on-site. What are your thoughts about, now that people are working or reporting to the offices, how do you think did that impact their mental health in terms of like, there's this, you have to be flexible because you're doing the hybrid, now you're doing on-site, and then the following month, we never know, we might be back to the Zoom setup again. So how do you think that kind of change impacts the mental health of people nowadays?
Well, like what you've mentioned before na parang different people experience different things, diba? So may mga times na different din yung coping mechanism nila. For some people, parang sobrang excited sila dun sa face-to-face setup kasi somehow ma-remove sila dun sa household nila. For them, household pala nila toxic. But there are people na parang sobrang comfortable sila dun sa household nila kasi may iwasan naman nila yung transportation, yung travel kasi sobrang traffic, sobrang dami ng tao. So different people experience different things. Yung iba, okay sa kanila kasi may car sila. Yung iba, ayaw nila kasi yung transportation or travel. Ayaw nila. So iba-iba. Yun talaga yung reality, no? And yung impact nga nila, different din. So, iba nag-improve, yung iba mas nagiging worse. Kaya yung mga organizations din naman talaga, gumagawa din sila ng mga ways din to somehow help their employees. May mga hybrid setup like na-mention ninyo. And part din kasi siya nung mismong memorandum na mandated ng government natin na dapat may tinatawag tayong reasonable accommodation. So, when we talk about reasonable accommodation, that means na si organization, meron siyang responsibility na i-accommodate si employee para ma-perform niya yung trabaho niya. Yung hindi nako-compromise yung work output niya, pero pinagbibigyan siya para ma-accommodate yung mga bagay na pangangailangan niya. For instance, kailangan niya na maging flexible sa schedule niya. Pagbigyan mo siya sa flexibility ng schedule niya, yung iba gusto nila ng work from home. Pagbibigyan mo siya dun sa work from home. Kasi hindi naman siya nandadaya Kasi nga, reasonable Makakatulong yun to actually perform yung trabaho niya. So, hindi rin nababawasan yung mismong side ni organization or ng mismong mga employer. So, may mga ganun na tayo ngayon na mga setup, reasonable accommodation. Tapos, yung iba, nagpa-provide na employee assistance program. And then, nagiging aware na din yung mga organization minsan na, as a leader, I have to improve din yung leadership skills ko. Kaya nung mismong pandemic, naging uso na din yung term na empathic leadership. So, nauso na din siya. Like, for instance, may mga cases kasi na na-raise before na parang, feeling ko hindi nagkikare sa akin yung boss ko kasi parang lagi nilang siya nakafocus dun sa mismong mga metrics or dun sa performance appraisal or sa performance ko in general. Pero hindi niya ako kinakamusta. Kaya iba natatrain na din paano maging empathic leaders. Like, before ka punta doon sa mismong performance na, you have to ask your employee na, kamusta ka na? Pero hindi lang basta kamusta ka na, kasi talagang nakikinig ka. So, yung mga specific skills, ini-improve din sa kanila. So, sa executive naman yan. And then dito na din lumabas yung job burnout. Gusto ko yung sinabi ni Doc RJ na hindi dapat natin over-pathologize yung mga nararanasan ng mga employee kasi yung mga nararanasan nila ay response lang doon sa paligid nila. Kaya sa workplace, it's important to understand ano ba yung job burnout. Yung definition niya sa World Health Organization, it's a chronic workplace distress. Meaning, kung maayos yung system, maayos yung workload, maayos yung schedule, maayos yung compensation, hindi magkakaroon ng ganong klase ng feeling yung mga employees na mentally distant sa trabaho, inefficient, or demotivated. So may mga ganyan. So may mga ini-improve dapat sa system to improve yung well-being.
Yes, I love that you explained that well. And I think to put it on another perspective as well is sometimes hindi lang talaga yung monetary value or being appreciated. Sometimes like having unclear work setup, work goals, having those non-clarity metrics will also lead to burnout. So it's really important to make clarity for that. And I love that this thing, KPI, it used to be like key performance indicators and have now become like keep people inspired because it's important that you're not just focusing on numbers. So for the leaders watching or listening to these, like you're hearing different insights, keep people inspired is very critical as well, not just the numbers or the bottom line. So now that we have these people transitioning into different kind of setups, right? People and companies are different. How else do you think can make things easier for them to, move on to this kind of like new world? There's hybrid, there's, remote work setup.
Well, siguro yung first is that you have to ensure the employee safety. Diba? Kasi parang mahirap na bumalik ka sa face-to-face tapos hindi adequate yung safeguards natin, hindi enforce yung mga protocols natin. Tapos siguro second is you have to also provide spaces for them to be reoriented dun sa social and emotional skills natin. Kasi yun yung nawala sa atin eh. Parang lahat tayo naging introvert in the course of the pandemic. Parang ganon. Parang hindi tayo nagkaroon ng opportunity to bond with other people. Yung i-approach mo pa lang yung boss mo, di ba? Minsan malaking anxiety inducing situation yun for other people. So baka kailangan ng ganong spaces. How do we actually learn to communicate again? How do we bond with other people na hindi lang nasa Zoom or hindi lang nasa online platform? And siguro yung pangatlo, na related din sa sinasabi ni Rian kanina about burnout is yung pagkilala na yung mga employee ay mga tao rin. Yes. They're also humans na number one, they have their feelings. Tapos pangalawa, meron rin silang capacity to participate dun sa processes that are being crafted in their workplace, diba? So yung pag-recognize ng autonomy nila, malaking bagay yon in terms of combating burnout. Kasi usually yung burnout, nangyayari yan pag chronically, tapos repetitive pa, tapos monotonous. Yeah. So pag walang fulfillment yung mga tao sa ginagawa nila, that's a very big contributor to burnout.
That is true. Not everyone's lucky to find a very, a job that has a lot of meaning. Yung talagang in terms of like more impact, there are certain jobs that it's very monotonous most of the time. So sometimes leaders have to be mindful of that. Oops, this is not some sort of like a police job where I'm helping people or not an NGO. Very straightforward yung job. So kailangan talaga they're constantly creating or implementing different activities, right, to keep people inspired. Now that remote work is also still around in different industries, obviously that comes with a ton of challenges as well. I really believe that regardless of the size of the organization, the company has to constantly invest in training the managers to have that practical knowledge on how they can be mindful of their team's mental health. So Prof. Rainier, perhaps you can share some insights. What do you think, can the employers make the culture feel like they have that trust for their employees, but at the same time, we are trying to micromanage the employees, right? But at the same time, we wanted to be focused on, I want to be mindful of my employees' mental health, so I will always do a check-in. How do you think can we balance that wherein, the managers will not be breathing down their necks, but at the same time, I want to let you know that I care for you, so I'm just checking in,
Okay, I think this is an issue of boundaries. Because during the time of the pandemic, as in parang nagkalabo-labo yung different aspects natin, even yung ating sense of time has become distorted. Wherein parang nag-overlap na yung personal life natin to our professional life. Wherein napansin natin na parang may mga moments wherein we tend to actually message someone about work-related kahit na out of office hours siya. Kahit na parang it's not within our like proper boundary of when should we work, when should we relay such information. So I think in order for us not to feel that yung boundary natin is na crossed by our employees and at the same time tayo to our colleagues, is that let's be conscious about this. Like as much as possible, I think we should always do relay yung mga messages or yung mga tasks kapag dinedelegate natin siya within the office hours as much as possible. Kasi 'di ba may mga times wherein we wanted to rest. Tapos all of a sudden, kapag nakakita tayo ng stimulus that reminds us of our work or what we have to do, imbes na nagiging like resting time natin siya, nagiging stressful time tuloy siya. So, in order for us to better compartmentalize, I think it should be a firm culture of the industrial setting na talagang dapat kapag within office hour, this is the only time that I have to delegate tasks, to send messages that are work-related. Then after this, I'll try to avoid to delegate tasks out of that office time or out of that time wherein na talagang nagre-rest na dapat yung mga tao. And so through this, we can assist them to have this mental compartmentalization of when I should be in the work mode and when should I be just being my own like self and just resting or within a specific time. So I think the boundaries should be clear about doon sa mga gustong nating gawin within the work setting and within our personal time.
I personally believe in that strategy, and I think another combo for that, like boundary, is also like communicating. Like for me, when in the workplace, to promote well-being, it's really important that if there's a target date and they wanted to throw in another task to a certain employee, and that employee they feel like have a lot of things going on in his or her plate, that employee has to communicate. Like, hey, I've got these things going on, which one do you want me to deprioritize, right? So, kailangan mawala yung nahihiyang magsabi. Kasi I think it's in the Filipino culture that ang dami mo nang ginagawa and then nahihiya kang mag-proactively explain that or ask a question, okay, I'm sure I can do that. I have these things right now going on. What do you want me to deprioritize so that I can do that for you? So communication is very important. Now, since we're talking about workplace right now, Rian, you have a really impressive background in industrial and organizational psychology. How do you think the most current, because like tools are constantly changing too, like what are your favorite current tools that you think an organization can use so that they can implement a better mental health policy in the workplace?
Well, usually yung specific tool na yun kasi hindi siya very specific tool na standard eh. It's something na usually ginagawa namin, needs assessment. So meaning parang we assess specifically yung needs ng organization kasi different organization have different needs. So ano ba yung need niya? Ano ba yung problem dito? Usually gagawin namin yun, mag-a-ask ng question dun sa mga sa mga leaders muna. Magkakaroon muna ng meeting yan eh. And then if ever gagawa ng specific na parang questions that will help us identify kung anong areas ba ng organization yung kailangan i-focus. Halimbawa, makikita ba dyan ang issue ba dito yung mismong sa schedule? Issue ba dito yung sa leadership halimbawa or sa management? Pero hindi naman siya mag-aaway sila. So it's like, kaya nga ginagawa, ina-explain din yun actually sa mga employees na yun nga yung point kung bakit siya ginagawa. Kasi they want to improve the organization. Parang wina-work out din yung communication. Ayan, kasi may iba. Lagi kasi natin din na-focus na parang laging employees, pero di natin minsan na-focus din na yung mga leaders, sobra din yung psychological price ng pagiging leader. Especially kung ikaw yung entrepreneur, lahat ng budget mo nanggaling sa bulsa mo halimbawa, wala ka naman funding from another organization. So yung stress niyan sobrang taas kasi yung tinatawag na cost sa organizational psychology. When we talk about cost, hindi lang siya financial kasama din dyan yung time. Money, yung effort, yung ganyan, counted siya. So, kung may mga naloloss na time, kaya, di ba, gusto nila mag-micromanage kasi gusto nila makita na bawat time talaga na ma-maximize. Pero, yun nga So, tinutulungan din sila i-work out yun na parang, yung point dito is, pag okay yung mental health ng mga employees ninyo, nagiging okay din yung overall organizational success. That's why you have to invest sa mga employees ninyo. So, yung mga tools, going back doon, more of yun, hanapin natin sa mag-needs analysis. Tapos, yung more of questionnaire FGD, mga method talaga siya. Hindi siya yung parang standardized, parang question na parang po pwede mong basta na lang itatapon. So, may mga specific ginagawa kami, job analysis. So, may mga methods yun, depende dun sa nature ng organization. So, guideline lang siya, pero it's something na we customize din to help organization na ma-identify yung specific needs at anong approach yung pinaka-effective dun sa mga employees nila.
I totally agree that kailangan talagang customize talaga yung approach, no?
Yeah.
And speaking of like needs of a certain organization, a lot of organizations have probably suffered from this, wherein their employees are picking up that trend called quiet quitting, where workers only do the bare minimum of work. This means a person can't be bothered outside their work schedules and only do things that they're paid off. Usually, I would term it like acting their wage. So, like I've seen a lot of employees as well, like vocalizing this, like, but in a different wordings. But it's sort of like connected to that. So, I want us to discuss this in a context of mental health, wherein do you all see this as a way of like employees coping for the new normal, or do you see this as just like they learned something out of the pandemic and now this is the impact, this is now their new mindset when they view their work? Nope, I'm not working outside my work hours. What are your thoughts on that?
Ako kasi naniniwala ko na dapat kung ano yung work na binibigay mo, dapat yun yung wage na binibigay rin sa kanila. So it's also a question of fairness and justice doon sa workplace, no? Kasi for the longest time, workers have been exploited, di ba? So, hindi nababayaran ng maayos, no? Tapos parang sobrang tagal ng mga working hours nila. So, tapos hindi pa maayos yung benefits minsan. So, those are real concerns na kailangan i-address, no? And I think dito papasok yung issue ng vulnerability as well, because hindi kasi siya napag-uusapan eh. 'Di ba? Parang it's usually kept under the rug, tapos parang hayaan na lang natin, wag na natin pag-usapan para happy lahat tayo, 'di ba? Pero unfortunately, pag hindi kasi natin in-address yung mga ganung mga concerns, it will have an impact to one's mental well-being. So I think leaders should actually take lead in that, no? Na parang maging open in terms of vulnerability, may concerns sila as individuals, workplace related, and then it allows other people to verbalize as well kung ano yung mga concerns nila. And pag napag-uusapan yung mga issues, doon nakakahanap ng solutions instead of just plainly not talking about it.
Actually, yung idea ng quiet quitting, feeling ko naman, yun yung response din nila. Kasi nung pandemic, dito nila nakita na mahalaga yung mental health ko eh. Replaceable ako eh. Parang ganun yung thought nila. Replaceable ako, pero yung mental health ko, ako mismo, kapag nawala ako, paano na? Kasi sarili ko yung ano ko eh, parang asset ko eh. So kung hindi ko alagaan to, paano na ako? So I think, nag-agree ako kay Doc RJ na it's important na i-prioritize natin yung mental health natin for leaders. Kasi syempre parang medyo problematic sa end nila yun. Kasi syempre ang point nila, profit, and syempre magkaroon ng success sa organization. At hindi naman masama yun na nag-aim ang bawat organization ng ganon. At mag-aim yung bawat organization na yung mga employees ay magbigay ng extra mile. Pero kusang loob yun eh. Yes. Kung mag-extra mile sila. Pero usually sa mga studies, yun nga, happy workers, yung happy workers na yan, nagiging high performers sila. So, paano sila magiging high performer? Pag masaya sila, di ba? So, ano yung mga kailangan ng mga employees para maging satisfied sila, maging happy sila, para makapag-perform sila ng tama. So, yun yung dapat aralin ng mga leaders. Which is yun nga, dapat mag-invest ka para bumuti yung mismong mental health ng mga employees ninyo, para yung quiet quitting medyo nababawasan, nag-extra mile sila. So may organizational participation kasi satisfied sila, may mga programs in place and all that. So malawak na discussion siya, pero I think important na mabuksan sana yung mga minds ng mga leader na kung gusto ng overall success, kailangan talaga gagawin, mag-invest ka sa employees mo.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of investment, obviously companies, no matter the size or background, they're always thinking about the ROI. But again, from what we've established already, it's not just the monetary ROI. Nandun din yung improvement of culture. On top of that, the most important thing, improvement of the mental health of the employees, right? Prof. Rainier, I'm curious about how do you think it is important for companies to focus on asking or like promoting mental health breaks for their employees?
Yes, it's very important, no, that this should be established because I guess, no, the companies, no, are not an exemption na dapat maging environment siya, no, or source siya, or maging safe space siya. Because actually, you know, those momentary breaks that the company is giving to us, that really means a lot, no, for us to self-regulate, for us to recharge ourselves in case, no, that we feel that we are like parang nabu-burn out tayo. Because the reason nga kung bakit nagkakaroon ng breakdowns and a burnout is it's because patuloy, no, yung work na ginagawa natin. And that mental health break, no, it's not just going to refresh us, no, kumbaga psychologically. Even yung physical rest, no, that will have an impact also when it comes to our mental health. Kumbaga, that mental health break, it's already a holistic, no, target of what is the need, no, of a certain employee for him or her to be prepared, no, to do his or her task the next day with a feeling na parang recharge siya and ready na ulit siya, no, na sumabak doon sa kanyang mga responsibilidad.
That is true. I love that term, sumabak, diba? After a well-rested or like a mental health break. I think like, hopefully, no, maging mainstream yan kasi there's still a culture of like, pakikisama, like wherein I don't want to take a break even though na-overwhelmed na ako kasi parang baka isipin nila I'm not contributing to the team. Sometimes employees feel like that. So like gusto nila makisama kasi parang tayo mga Filipino mahilig tayo. So mga ganun, makisama. But now no, if you need a mental health break, you need to take a mental health break, and companies should not put like any like stigma around that, but encourage employees like it's totally fine. You're human and you're allowed to do that if you feel like you're closing to that burnout stage. Right? Kasi meron din tinatawag na parang groupthink, yung psychological phenomenon wherein you wanted to like go with the flow, go with the status quo. Like if there's this thing going on, oh, you don't want to miss out on that. You want to be part of that group even though malapit ka na, maubos na yung energy mo, pero go ka pa din. But no, you would be able to contribute more if you were back to your healthier self. So go on, this is your sign if you're looking for a mental health break, this is it. Actually, there's now a massive shift as well since there's a lot of mental health webinars during the early 2020 and then mental health events and initiatives and projects and how people can find support for their mental health problems.
Well, in terms of support, sabi ko nga kanina, yung pinaka-immediate people around you, no? Your classmate, your workplace, your family, your partner, sila yung pinaka-reliable na mental health support, especially during the time of pandemic. So I think we really need to make sure that everyone gets capacitated in terms of providing basic mental health support. Hindi pwedeng psychologist at psychiatrist lang yung mag-handle ng mental health situation ng bansa, no? So we have to take responsibility collectively as well. So tingin ko yun, we need to build capacity, especially of the non-specialist. Tapos pangalawa, scale up talaga natin yung access to care for those who actually need it, no? Lalo na dun sa mga merong clinical disorders already.
Well, while I agree, no, that the other people, no, within our surroundings, no, are very important to support us, no, such as yung friends, partner natin, even family members. Unfortunately, not everyone, no, is like they have this qualification to actually understand your experiences natin. So it's very important that the person that we should be like considering as our support system is something that we trust.
Yes.
Other people kasi they just hear but they do not understand. They do not really listen. Other people naman, they do listen but they are not competent enough to handle kapag narinig na nila yung experiences natin, no?
Yes.
Kasi nga that's why we have to be very like observant. We have to really choose, no, yung mga tao na pinag-o-open-upan natin ng ating mga nararamdaman. It should be really something na trusted natin. Kasi once we have opened up, no, to the right individual, whether it is your friend, your sister, your parents, is that you can have this momentary relief, no? Kumbaga, this is what we call as catharsis, no? Na nare-release mo yung tension mo with the right person na pinag-open-upan mo. Kasi ang nakukonvey niya sa'yo is yung true understanding and empathy na walang judgment, hindi kanya hindi kanya papagsasabihan or parang i-invalidate yung experiences mo. So it's really important, no, na it should not just be just anyone. But we also have to consider yung qualification of the person on how he or she will be able to be receptive doon sa mga i-share natin.
Oo, parang hindi ka i-minimize kasi meron mga ganung friends na they're not capable of showing empathy or they're not wearing that lens so they can understand you. And at the same time, all prior to that, making sure na before you vent out kung sino man yung may mental health challenges, to ask first the person, do you have the capacity for me to vent out? Are you able to hear me out right now? Kasi that person might be going to another, the same thing too, right? So like it's a really a dual sort of like relationship. And I totally agree with you. Kailangan find that person who can really, who's meant to hear that, like you can trust.
If I may add, this is what we call as emotional dumping.
Yes.
Yan. Kasi nga may mga tao na parang very overwhelmed sila with what they're going through, that they just dump their emotion without asking for the consent if it is okay for me to share. So that's why parang imbes na magkatulungan kayo, nagka-stressan pa kayong dalawa. Because yun nga, parang boundary issue din siya actually. So I think even if you are going through something, I think we have to also be empathetic to the other person na pagsasharean natin. So that talaga maging effective yung gusto nating relief na gusto nating maranasan within ourselves.
What about families? Like, do you believe they're the best people for us to, turn for our mental health struggles? Or do you think that could like create more, like toxic environment? Like, I know it depends on the family, but what are your thoughts on that, Rian?
Based on my experience din sa practice, most of the time, hindi sila lahat, pero sa dami ng mga clients na na-handle ko during the pandemic, most of them, yung nakikita nila na nagiging toxic yung household nila. Siguro nandun na din kasi yung part na during the pandemic, lahat may pinagdadaanan, bawat family members. So, nagiging toxic din sila sa isa't isa. So, hindi sila yung usually na best person talaga na minsan, na pwede nating lapitan. I think maganda doon yung sinabi kanina ni Prof. Ladik nga na kung sino yung pinagkakatiwalaan mo, mas maganda na gano'n. Minsan yung pinagkakatiwalaan natin, hindi naman sa family lang din eh. Pwedeng best friend, pwedeng partner, pwedeng co-worker, pwedeng boss din kung talagang titiwala ka sa kanya. So I think doon pa rin tayo sa part ng kung sino yung pinaka-trust mo or parang comfortable ka mag-open up. And I think siguro additional lang din kasi parang fino-focus din natin na parang mag-reach out sa mga groups, I think it's important na mataas din yung self-awareness natin. Okay pa ba ako? Kasi kung meron man tayo dapat i-build na strong relationship, aside from strong relationship with other people, strong relationship with yourself.
Yes.
Marami ako na-encounter ng mga clients kasi na parang they are not actually aware kung ano yung need nila. They don't know how to express their emotions. They don't know kung ano bang nangyari dito sa feeling ko. Ano bang tawag dito? Nagagalit ba ako? Na-irritate ba ako? Ano ba to? So, they are not actually sure. So, I think important na ma-practice din natin or connect tayo sa self natin. Yung intrapersonal relationship, that's important.
I'm so grateful you said that. Like, on a health coach perspective, we always advocate for that. Like, work on your self-awareness game and do your inner work because that is critical part of your mental health journey.
Siguro i-add ko na lang rin kay Rian is that yung support kasi minsan pwede natin siya makuha dun sa people who have similar experiences, na experience mo. Kaya ako, sobrang, ang dami ko naririnig na inspiring stories with people na lumapit sa mga service user organizations. Ito yung mga, meron silang mental health concern, they coped with it, successfully living sa kanilang circle na nakakatulong pa sila dun sa ibang mga tao. So, I think yun yung hindi masyadong na-highlight rin as a source of support. As long as they're connected with a professional na nagbibigay sa kanila ng advice from time to time, malaking bagay yung mga service user organizations natin.
Yeah, that's powerful. I also wanted to throw in, since we are now talking about friends, yung mga trusted friends, right? And then kung sino man yung partner na you wanted to open up with, and then we talked about family, is that another possibility? But how about workplace? Do you think it's okay to open up about your mental health struggle to your boss or to an HR manager? What are your thoughts in terms of the Philippine setup?
Well, ito yung medyo sad na part kasi not everyone is actually equipped din sa pag-manage ng psychosocial support. Like for instance, boss ako tapos i-handle ko yung employee ko. Hindi ko alam kung paano din ang provide ng psychosocial support. Nandun pa din yung minsan na invalidate yung experience ng mga employee kapag nag-open up. Ganito yung naging problem niya na workout niya. So, ito nga tinatry ko nang bawasan yung mo. Parang nasusumbat pa sa'yo. May mga ganun na level din eh. Yun nga, nasa bahay ka na nga lang tapos hindi mo pa. May mga ganun example. So, parang hindi lahat actually equipped din sa workplace. So I think important dito na yun nga, ma-equip natin, makapacitate din halimbawa yung mga leaders, yung mga human resources, kung paano ba talaga ma-provide yung psychosocial support within the organization. Basic skills lang naman siya eh. Something na pwedeng i-train naman or i-work out or i-workshop halimbawa na part ng wellness program nila para syempre matulungan nila or matugunan nila yung mismong need ng mga employees nila. So, yun. Pero pwedeng mag-create talaga ng support group within the organization. Pwedeng magkaroon ng psychological safety doon kung lahat sila ay nagiging equipped din doon sa pag-provide ng psychosocial support. So, yun yung sad doon.
Meron talagang mga workplaces that they're yet to embrace the fact na mental health is really important. We're not saying that back then it's not important. It's just that now there are more spotlight into that problem, and therefore more people are sharing what they're going through, as opposed to like back in the day wherein there's a stigma. Now there are a lot of initiatives to destigmatize that, and so people are more vocal. So it is not to show that this generation is weaker compared to the other generation. It's just that there's more platform to it right now, and therefore it's being highlighted from time and time again. So now that we've talked about, dealing with people, because there's still apparently tiny bit of discrimination about mental health issues, how can we deal with people who are, I wouldn't say ignorant, but they're not capable of understanding that, there are people struggling with it. They're not wearing that lens of empathy. Us thinking, we have this leader right now, we're going to talk to that leader who wanted to improve or update his or her leadership skills so that he or she can deal with people in his team who are struggling mentally. How can we improve or help this guy right here? Update his.
Ang hirap din kasi it depends din dun sa leader na yun if they are open actually for change. Kasi kung hindi sila ganun din ka-open, hindi din talaga sila totally mag-improve. Pero usually naman, pag nakikita niya nang nag-ano na yung organization niya, doon na siya na medyo napipilitan na ano bang nagiging problem. So, kasi nag-ask talaga na expert. May mga ganun na parang doon nila na-realize, nga, kailangan nga ng leadership program or kaya naman parang leadership na parang concern na to kasi yung mga employees alis ng taas ng turnover. Yung ganun.
Yes.
Daming hinahire tapos bilang hindi tumatagal.
Which is more expensive.
Expensive. Kasi syempre, hindi naman lahat ng na-hire mo, hindi ka din sure kung talagang magtatagal din siya. Tapos syempre, mag-a-adjust pa siya. Paano kung sa adjustment period pala, nakita na yung ugali mo, aalis na naman siya. So, mag-suspend ka na naman, di ba? So, talagang magastos. So, ayun, I think it's important na yung bawat leader talaga. Maging aware sila na may mga times na kailangan nila talagang improve din yung self nila. So, ayun, it's something na hindi natin masasabi kung mahirap kasi hindi talaga lahat ng tao, basta pwede mong sabihin sa kanila, kailangan mo na ng help, boss ka. So, dapat ikaw mismo yung mag-initiate din na parang, teka, there's something wrong Ano kaya yun? Ipa-assess ko nga. Tapos pag nagsabi yung expert or nagsabi yung kung sino man na mukhang ito po yung kailangan kasi ito yung feedback ng mga employees natin, makinig tayo. Kasi without our employees, hindi naman din magra-run yung company natin Sila talaga yung blood ng organization natin. So, I think we need to listen to them.
Yes.
Ako mas patient na ako ngayon when it comes to dealing with those people na medyo close-minded pa when it comes to mental health. Kasi syempre, culture, parang siguro generational differences rin in a way, na iba yung exposure ng mga mas bata sa atin. So ngayon, mas patient na talaga ako. And siguro yung call, not only for the business leaders, but also for the advocates, is to learn the language of business. Na kasi pag yung sinasabi ni Rian kanina na maraming mga turnover, daming nawawalang mga staff, meron niyang economic impact And I think papunta na tayo doon. Even the World Health Organization nag-create ng investment case report. Ilan yung nawawala na income just because of mental health concerns. At ilan yung hindi natin na ma-maximize na resources. So yung opportunity na ma-maximize yung employees mo, I think isa din yung magandang idagdag dun sa evaluation. And siguro, important rin yung direct contact with people na merong mental health concerns. Not only those who are suffering, kasi usually when we talk about mental health, lagi yung merong depression, hindi productive. Pero yung other side of the spectrum, which is focused on wellness, paghanap ng meaning sa trabaho niya, malaking aspect yon. So I think those should be part of the conversation na hindi lang puro problema pag pinag-usapan yung mental health.
Yes.
You know what, to add to what you guys mentioned, really love it. Now, there are leaders talaga na, as you said, kailangan maging patient ka kasi they're yet to embrace that growth mindset, They don't have that growth mindset. And that's very critical for leaders nowadays because if they're just thinking that they know everything, they've got nothing to learn, how else can they support? How else can they learn the new opportunities, or well, I call problems opportunities, the new opportunities in place to help that person with his or her mental health journey, right? So it's really important na meron yung leaders nowadays, if you want to boost your employees' mental health, to embrace growth mindset. Actually, also, like another thing, like according to World Health, because you mentioned World Health Organization, like they have this data that came out that close to 1 billion people worldwide now have mental health issue. So that means it is certain that in a certain organization, there's one or couple, or we don't know how many, but it is certain that someone is, struggling mentally. And that's given fact, I think. Like we've all seen it. Like all of us have also had anxiety at some point in our lives, right? So very important growth mindset for your wellness journey. I'm like shouting that to the world right now. I am actually just wondering also, like, I think that we've talked about the 360 degree, right? Family, the workplace, because family is very critical to have a safe space in the work setup, right? So we touched a bit about that. We touched about the problems, common problems, mental health related during the past, couple of years. How else do you think can a certain company increase that feeling of belonging? Because for me, like to have a safe space in a workplace, the employees have to feel that they belong to that, and there's that mission that they're trying to contribute for. Do you have any tips, Rian, one specific practical tip that is easy to implement to promote that sense of belongingness, to have a safe space at work?
Well, yung communication, yung open communication within the organization. Pag sabing open communication, you are free to express yourself without judgment din, sana. Inaalaw ka na ma-express mo yun. So, kasama na kasi din minsan sa open communication, yung kinukonsider mo na din yung vulnerability ng individual na to. Sa open communication, sana nakukonsider na din natin dito yung halimbawa, yung pagiging safe natin when it comes to yun, opening up din. So, nandun na din halos lahat. So, yung communication, I think important siya kasi yun yung nawala, or yun yung pinaka-main problem natin during the pandemic. In terms of chat, in terms of yung face-to-face na usap, yun yung naging problem, di ba? So, kung maayos lang yung pag-explain natin, pakikipagkapwa natin sa mga employees natin, I think yun, makakatulong siya. So, I think yung open communication yung pinaka-kailangan i-improve from top to bottom na organization, from bottom to top. So I think yun, kailangan natin work out yun.
Totoo yan. Now also, another fact is achieving mentally healthy workforce is there has to be societal involvement, right? So the goal is, as you keep mentioning this earlier, yung collective efforts, right? So now let's talk about some tools that we can manage in terms of outside the workplace naman. Ano kaya, pag nasa society na, do you think because personally, I think having more advocacies or advocates doing you guys, or in my case, I do it through the form of podcasts, right? So do you think that's one way to continuously us push for more, okay, let's lessen the stigma around mental health? And if not, what are the other strategies as a society, as a whole, do you think we should keep doing so that we can help people who's struggling from mental health?
Well, as for me, in this generation wherein technology is really advanced, and I think a part of why a lot of younger people nowadays are much more aware about the aspects of mental health, it's because of the technology itself. So I think there has to be something that we have to take advantage of this moment, wherein I think the more and the faster that we can advocate for something, I think we have to stick and maximize that. So, kasi ang goal natin when we advocate is to reach out to as much people as we can. And of course, through the help of the technology, that can be possible. So those let's say yung podcast, webinars, even mga TikTok videos, yung mga short clips wherein I think very effective siya, lalo na kapag informative siya, talaga nakukuha yung attention natin. Those things can actually make someone to be awakened about a certain issue, or to be enlightened about doon sa mga previously na maling mga pag-iisip nila concerning mental health.
Yes.
So I think we have to maximize it carefully. Kasi may mga tao, no, that are using, no, the platforms or the technology, no, in a way na parang hindi siya nakakatulong. So we have to be responsible, no, when we advocate using, no, our social media platforms or when we use, no, certain types of technology.
Talagang may responsibility mga content creators. And then yung mga consumers then, they have to be mindful then of what kind of contents they're consuming and fact check everything. Another thing I wanted to highlight aligned to that is suicide, right? You couldn't say like that person committed suicide. The right way to say it is that person died by suicide, right? So certain things like that, like mga anggulong na ganun na, I think it's very important to be pushed out there para lang malaman na ma-educate, mag-raise ng awareness. Maliit na bagay, but it is a very important thing. Speaking of another important thing, self-care is very important. So I'm actually curious, you are all great in terms of advocating health, specifically mental health. So obviously we all agree into that. But what else do you think we should, you know, like what other narratives do you think we should push out there to the people watching this or the people listening to this that they're yet to know about the self-care? Kasi lagi na natin narinig self-care is important, self-care is this and that. But is there a new thing that you'd like to share to the audience?
Ako yung pinaka malaking realization ko about self-care is that if you want to reap its benefit, kailangan mo siyang gawin. Hindi siya pwedeng pinag-uusapan lang. Tapos in-expect mo na magiging well ka na. No? So I think we have to learn how to structure it in our day. Kung ako, ginagawa ko, parang naglalagay ako ng schedule sa calendar ko just for me to do some self-care practices. So yung ganun, yung mga maliliit na mga things that you can do, pag naging regular sila, I think yun yung magbibigay talaga ng benefit ng self-care. Hindi yung pag naisip mo lang, hindi yung pag stressed ka na, doon ka lang magsi-self-care. Hindi siya nag-work ng ganun. So you have to be preventive about it as well.
Very powerful technique.
Ito, yung idea, kasi malinaw na self-care isn't selfish. Pero ito, not all pleasurable activities are automatically self-care. Lahat ng pinag-uusapang self-care, it requires responsibility, it requires moderation din. So hindi porket masaya siyang gawin, self-care yan. Halimbawa, alam na naman natin yung mga ginagawa natin na pag napasobra ka ng kain, napasobra ka ng inom, napasobra ka ng tulog, hindi siya mabuti. So I think kailangan ng moderation din doon. And at the same time, part din ng self-care yung pag-confront ng mga difficult things. Yung pag-embrace ng negative experiences, that's also part of self-care. For instance, you sit with your emotions, malungkot ka, galit ka, nai-irritate ka, i-confront mo yun. That's part of being human, di ba? Na-mention na kanina ni Doc RJ yun eh. Totoo yun eh. Hindi mo dapat over-pathologize yung mga experiences mo. Kasi sa mga studies, lumalabas na yung negative emotions are not automatically bad. Yung classification lang niya ay negative emotions kasi nagbibigay siya ng discomfort. But bilang tao, talagang may discomfort tayong nafe-feel. Depende yun sa kung ano yun na-experience natin. So may hindi magandang nangyari, nasaktan ka, normal. May ginawang masama sa'yo, nagalit ka, normal. Nagiging bad lang yung isang bagay kapag mali yung pagkaka-express natin. So negative experiences, negative emotions are not totally bad. It's something na kailangan natin i-embrace. So pag na-feel mo yung discomfort na yun, instead na takbuhan mo siya, you have to ask yourself, ano itong nafe-feel ko? Ano yung nangyayari sa akin? That's also raising your awareness eh. Oo. And the more na iniiwasan natin itong negative emotions na to, the more na nagli-lead tayo doon sa emotional disorders or psychological disorder. Nasa study niya ni Barlow et al. 2011. O, di ba alam ko yan? Paulit-ulit ko lang dinidiscuss yan eh. Paulit-ulit ko dinidiscuss. So, it's something na kailangan talaga natin i-embrace. Yun yung lagi ko talagang pinupush kasi hindi ko gusto yung idea na parang kailangan laging pag self-love, pleasurable lang siya. Hindi. Pagiging responsible, halimbawa, financial concerns. O kailangan ba yung retail therapy? Sabi nila nakakatulong for mental health. Pero kung nangangutang ka na para dun sa mismong kinukuha mo or kaka-add to cart mo, chine-check out mo, hindi na siya good for your mental health din or sa self-care. So, lahat may moderation. So you have to be responsible. You have to be aware dun sa mga actions mo.
May naalala na ako kasi iba yung isipin nila, yeah, everything should be in moderation, including moderation. So it's like, no. I mean, that should not be the case. As what Rian said, na kailangan talaga, we have to be mindful, o baka sobra na to, yung pag-shopping mo, yes, it brings so much joy, but everything has to be in moderation.
And I think feeling ko ito yung dapat natin i-normalize. At saka i-hype. Pinapauso nila yung love language. Pausuhin natin yung emotion language. What does it mean kapag meron kang anger? Because people, iba yung response natin sa anger. May iba pag nagagalit sila, nagko-confront sila, may iba lumalayo. So you have to understand yung language ng emotions mo para alam mo kung paano mag-respond, alam mo kung paano i-handle siya. I think yun yung kailangan din natin i-improve para maayos din yung communication natin.
Spot on. I love that we're highlighting not the typical self-care. Don't get us wrong, like of course the regular self-care like going to the spa or having massage or doing retail therapy. Those are great. Iba-iba naman yung self-care. But what we're trying to put here is like you not so typical self-care. And that's what I wanted to hear. Like that one you said is really a thing that we should normalize as well. Not just the 5 love languages, but the emotional languages. Now, I think it's also like speaking about, self-care. Do you think that others have really like responsibility to be constantly focused on caring for someone, let's say, about boyfriend or girlfriend, or let's say, colleague lang? Do you think that it's a constant task that they have to like include in their to-do list now? Oh, I know that this person is struggling mentally. I have to be on constant support to that person. Like how can we balance that caring for ourselves and at the same time caring for others as well? Is there like a strategy that you guys have advised to others?
Well, I think we have to check on ourselves as well if we're regulated enough for us to actually give that energy to other people, because mamaya niyan, yung constant checking natin is parang we are trying to please na pala yung ibang tao, which is not going to be adaptive for us, because that means that you are disregarding yourself just to check on to someone else. So you have to see to yourself if am I okay really to check on other people, or am I also carrying something within me that makes me incapable to actually handle the experiences of others? Well, it's good to think about yung mga loved ones natin. And of course, from time to time, hindi naman siguro yung araw-araw, yung from time to time that we think about them, kamustahin natin sila. Kumbaga, yung isang kumusta, it's going to mean a lot for a certain individual who wants to be understood with their experiences. Kumbaga, siguro hindi siya yung parang feeling ng responsibilidad. Kasi kapag parang responsibilidad siya, obliged ka na gawin siya. Kumbaga, it should be out of your genuine concern, your genuine care, spontaneous, kumbaga, rather than yung parang responsibility. So that in that manner, mas magiging, kumbaga, harmonious yung connection niya with one another.
I love that. That's a great way to like really build that dynamics, right? Not like something na, because commonly, pag leader ka, like, it's a checklist. Oh, I have to check into this next employee X and then next one employee Y. I love that you put it like it has to be genuine, very like natural, like when you're hanging out with your barkada and all that, diba? Mahaba-habang usapan siya pero not scheduled sometimes. As employees or employers, how else do you think can we achieve that mentally healthy workplace? Since we're talking about the safe space and we wanted to provide as much values as possible.
In terms of the public health perspective, malaking bagay yung policy. So I think a lot of companies right now are starting to develop their own mental health policies, which cover yung awareness, yung pag-scale up ng mental health programs nila, and of course yung non-discrimination in the workplace. Those are very important concepts. Pero maliban dun sa mental health policies, may mga other policies tayo na mental health supporting or mental health promoting as well, So for example, yung Safe Spaces Law, So it's a law that provides non-discrimination for women, safe space for women. So isa yun sa mga magandang tignan rin as a complement to the mental health law. And of course, yung yung pag-scale up ng mga people in the workplace who can also provide mental health support aside from the external assistance providers and the professionals. Kasi yun nga, very important na meron tayong malalapitan kung kailan kailangan natin ng support.
I love that. Talagang collective efforts, not just the employers looking after the employees, but even the governments creating policies that really increase us adapting how we can improve the mental well-being of the Filipinos. So talagang effort siya ng lahat, hindi lang ng isang tao. Obviously, the person going through that, his or her mental health journey, may responsibility din siya kasi katawan niya yun, brain niya yun, right? But at the same time, it needs like that holistic or 360-degree support from everyone. Kasi what if you have that mental health law, you have that things that the government are rolling out, but what if that person lacks financial power? Like they don't know how they can feed their family for the next week. Obviously, kahit may therapy sessions for free, right, left and right? If that person doesn't have money, diba? So talagang kailangan may efforts in to increase Kasi sobrang tumataas na yung cost of living, right? So talagang part din siya ng papag-usapan yung financial health, when you say about mental health, right? So, wow, that was a lot of insights for me. I wanted to expand it longer. I hope you guys have picked up a lot of insights because I myself have learned so many things from them. Please feel free to share this as well to your loved ones or to your followers so that they can learn a thing or two based from this conversation. Thank you so much again, Doc RJ, Rian, and Prof. Rainier. Before we wrap it up, I'd love for you, if you don't mind, to share any final thoughts about our topic today.
Pick up lang ako from our victory way back 2018 when we passed the Philippine Mental Health Law. So meron na tayong national framework on mental health. But of course, in terms of implementation, medyo kailangan natin mag-pick up, no? Because yun nga, pandemic. So may mga instances na naglag yung implementation. So especially on the governance side, no? Doon sa pag-cascade niya sa mga local government units, no? Sa mga mayors natin. So kulitin natin yung mga mayors natin na magpasa ng ordinance para yung mga concepts na napag-usapan natin, meron silang adequate na pondo. Kasi hindi naman mangyayari yung mga pangarap natin kung wala silang adequate budget, no? And of course, yung sa health human resource, yung mga psychiatrists, psychologists natin, kailangan nating maparami sila. And at the same time, ma-maximize rin yung psychometricians. Do you know na wala tayong plantilla positions for psychometricians sa government? So, hindi natin na ma-maximize yung 20,000 plus na mga psychometricians natin, which I think can help doon sa pag-augment ng needs ng ating country.
Thank you so much for that. How about you, Rian?
Since we're talking about workplace, I think this is an invitation doon sa ating mga leaders and organizations to invest in mental health. So I think the smartest move that any organizations can make is to invest in their employees' mental health. Kasi kapag okay yung mental health nila, nagiging okay yung performance nila, mas maganda yung contribution nila sa overall organizational success. But of course, sana gawin nila yon ng may genuine concern. Hindi dahil, kasi magpa-profit ako dito. Pero sana maramdaman din nila. Pero naniniwala naman ako na by nature, nandiyan naman sa feeling natin yon na nakikipagkapwa tayo. So sana yon mas mag-invest tayo sa mental health para dun sa mga employees natin.
Thank you so much for that. Prof. Rainier?
And as for me, I think it is the part wherein we have to learn how to be flexible. The pandemic, when it happened, parang dati kasi nakala natin na hindi possible yung work from home, yung mag-online class. But that all changed, na possible pala siya. Kumbaga yung mga traditional thinking natin, na bago siya during the time of the pandemic. So we have to be flexible in such a way na kailangan maging adaptable tayo to changes. Because a psychologically healthy personality is the one that is flexible.
Love it. Thank you so much for that. Thank you all three. And thank you for joining San Miguel Light Speakeasy Podcast, Mental Health at Work, ang mahaba-habang usapan and turning your workplace into a safe space. This is brought to you by CNN Philippines in partnership with San Miguel Light. And to our viewers and listeners, I leave you with this by saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. In order for us to take care of others, we must take care of ourselves. Thank you all so much. My name is Mickey Sachiko. Have a great day.